David and Bathsheba. In the spring, David sent his army under the command of Joab to lay siege to the Ammonite city of Rabbah. Instead of going to battle, he chose to stay at home in Jerusalem. One evening while walking around on the roof of his palace, David saw a very beautiful woman bathing, so he sent someone to find out who the woman was. He was told she was Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah the Hittite, who was away fighting in his army. David sent a messenger for Bathsheba. When she arrived, he seduced and slept with her. Afterward, she returned home. A while later, Bathsheba sent a message to David saying, "I am with child." David then sent a message to Uriah the Hittite to come and see him. Uriah left the siege and returned to Jerusalem. David asked Uriah how the siege was going, then sent him to spend the night at home with his wife. He was hoping that Uriah would sleep with Bathsheba and later think the child was his. But Uriah did not think it was fair that he should be at home while the other troops were living in tents. So he slept at the entrance of the palace with the other servants. The next day David found out that Uriah had not spent the night with Bathsheba. So that day he got him drunk. But again Uriah did not return home, he slept on a mat by the palace entrance. David's plan had failed and Uriah returned to the siege of Rabbah. Desperate to hide his secret, David wrote a letter to Joab with an order. "Put Uriah out in front where the fighting is the heaviest. Then withdraw from him so that he will be struck down." Joab obeyed the order. He put Uriah at a place where he knew the strongest defenders of the city would be. Several of Joab's soldiers were killed, one of them was Uriah, who was shot with arrows. When Bathsheba heard that her husband was dead, she mourned for him. After the time of mourning was over, David brought her to his house, and she became his wife and bore him a son. But David's actions had greatly displeased the Lord. So the Lord sent the prophet Nathan to David. He told David the following story. There were two men, one rich and the other poor. The rich man had a very large number of sheep and cattle, but the poor man had nothing except one little ewe. He raised it, and it grew up with him and his children. It shared his food, drank from his cup, and even slept in his arms. It was like a daughter to him. Now a traveler came to the rich man, but instead of taking one of his own sheep to prepare a meal for the traveler, he stole the ewe lamb that belonged to the poor man. He killed the lamb and prepared it as a meal for his guest. David was furious. "As surely as the Lord lives, the man who did this must die. He must pay for that lamb 4 times over, because he did such a bad thing and had no pity." Nathan then said to David, "You are that man. This is what the Lord says, I anointed you king over Israel, and I delivered you from Saul. I gave you your master's house and wives. I gave you all Israel and Judah. And I would have given you even more. Why did you disobey and do such evil? You murdered Uriah the Hittite, and took his wife to be your own. From now on bloodshed shall never depart from your family." David cried, "I have sinned against the Lord." Nathan replied, "The Lord has taken away your sin. You are not going to die. But because you have shown utter contempt for the Lord, the son born to you will die." After Nathan had gone home, the child born to Bathsheba and David became ill. David pleaded with God to spare the child. He fasted and spent the nights lying in sackcloth on the ground. 7 days later the child died. David was told the sad news. He stopped fasting and praying, then he went in to see the child and comfort his wife. Some time later, David and Bathsheba had another son whom they named Solomon. The Lord loved him and sent word through Nathan the prophet to bless him with the name Jedediah, meaning friend of God. And Solomon grew up to become the next king of Israel. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Share and leave a comment. Subscribe.